Hello, I'm Bill Bullard with R-CALF USA, the voice of the independent cattle producer in the United States of America. Well, in November, the 13 cattle producers from across the United States that make up the board of R-CALF USA made an assessment of the events that have impacted their profitability over the past few years, and it was not a favorable assessment. It was clear that cattle producers like them needed an industry-wide plan because whoever plan the industry is now following is not benefiting them or their fellow cattle producers in their industry, the United States live cattle industry. Now, the board was mindful of the beef industry's plan, developed every 5 years and paid for with the live cattle industry's mandatory checkoff assessments. That 5-year plan has changed very little during the past 2 decades, and it has obviously failed to ensure that the live cattle supply chain, which provides the inputs to the very profitable beef industry, receives its competitive share of the dollars that consumers spend on beef. And looking at this year's beef industry long-range plan, developed again with your beef checkoff dollars, the board found that it contained numerous strategies designed to actually control cattle producers and to increase their production costs, which the board viewed as an affront to their desire to exercise their liberties and freedoms to make their own decisions as to how to best run their cattle operations. For example, the beef industry's plan calls for increasing cattle producers' participation in a nationwide animal identification system, and increasing cattle producers' participation in certification and costly verification programs. And it even calls on cattle producers to develop and presumably to submit to someone written grazing management plans. So in November, the board assessed the fact that there have been unprecedented anomalies in the U.S. cattle market during the past few years, and the fact that there has been a lack of responsiveness from either lawmakers or the beef industry to take any corrective actions, and the fact that the beef industry's long-range plan was just that, a plan for beef manufacturers and not for cattle producers. They then concluded that the cattle producers needed a 5-year plan if their goal of achieving meaningful opportunities for cattle producer profitability is ever going to be achieved. And so they set out to work to develop a first ever cattle industry long-range plan that is being unveiled this week. Now, the cattle industry plan is quite different from the beef industry plan, primarily because the cattle industry plan focuses on both short-term and long-term reforms and improvements needed to strengthen the United States live cattle supply chain. The cattle industry plan centers around 4 main objectives that cattle producers will immediately recognize as beneficial to achieving a more prosperous future for them and their neighbors. The objectives include, number 1, growing domestic and export demand for beef from cattle that are born, raised, and harvested in the United States, and by promoting the United States' unparalleled commitment and investment to cattle husbandry practices and beef quality and safety. Number 2, improving cattle sector profitability for United States cattle farmers and ranchers by expanding available marketing outlets and increasing both competition and transparency within domestic and export markets for cattle and beef. And number 3, intensifying efforts to preserve and protect the liberty and freedom of United States independent cattle producers to adopt production practices of their choosing based on their assessment of competitive market forces. And finally, number 4, elevating the United States cattle industry's critical role in achieving the United States food security needs for an uninterrupted supply of high-quality, United States-produced beef protein. The vision and mission described in the cattle industry plan is equally unique and likewise focuses specifically on the interests of cattle producers. The vision for the cattle industry is to be a profitable and viable United States agricultural industry that supports rural communities and is comprised of widely dispersed family-owned and family-operated cattle farms and ranchers, whose owners and operators are free to make their own production and marketing decisions. With that vision, the plan describes the cattle industry's mission as achieving long-term prosperity for independent United States cattle farmers and ranchers and the rural communities they support by restoring robust market competition for cattle and rebalancing the disparate market power now concentrated in both domestic and export markets for cattle and beef. Now, the board hopes this first ever cattle industry long-range plan will encourage cattle producers from across the United States to begin working together to achieve their common interests by bringing this focused long-range plan to fruition. Now, to view the first ever cattle industry long-range plan, please go to our website at www.r-calfusa.com. And while you're there, please join with us so we become strong enough to direct your U.S. cattle industry toward a more profitable and prosperous future for yourselves and your children. With that, have a productive week. Thank you and goodbye.